You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe White.
Welcome to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. In the studio with us now is Trish Melvin from Fruitland. Thank you. Mike Goldberg from Del Mar.
Good afternoon.
So, Mike, I know you have been staying on top of the NRCAC meetings. You have done work with Conley Mill, but someone who has really spent the majority of their time really focused on the Save Conley Mill aspect is Mikkel Darlene, and her husband James as well. I see them a lot at Parks and Rec meetings. They've been there to work in work sessions to help get a dog park at Leonard's Mill Pond, but also benefiting. She was recognized as a volunteer with the county for her work with the football program in Salisbury. I want to bring her in, and I want to talk about the Save Conley Mill Park initiative. And Trish, as many meetings as you've been attending, I'm sure you have not heard much about Conley Mill being there for the 287G discussions. But I want you to listen into what Mikkel has to say, and then I want to bring you back in and see what kind of insight you have gathered just from hearing it and see if there's any similarities to these two stories.
Looking forward to it.
Great. So stay with us. When we come back, we're going to bring in Mikkel Darlene, and we're going to talk about Save Conley Mill Park. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. In the studio with us now is Mikkel Darlene from Del Mar. Thank you. Mike Goldberg, thanks for sticking around from Del Mar.
Of course.
So, Mikkel, I want to ask you, I've seen you at many county council meetings. What got you involved and why did you get started going?
So my husband and my family, we moved to Wicomico County, and when we were buying our house, we had heard about Conley Mill Park. Okay. We had kind of researched it. We knew this was coming, and we wanted to be close to it, be a part of it. When last year's events of Safari at the Quarry came up, and we found out that the park had been removed from the Capital Improvement Program and the Tri-County Council Economic Development Strategy, we decided we wanted to help form an advocacy group to protect the original vision for Conley Mill Park.
And that vision came from County Executive Bob Culver back in the 2010s. The land was donated. They had used that property to excavate soil to build the bypass, but it had really remained vacant and actually had started to lead to trespassers out there and some dangerous people out there swimming. So the land was donated to the county, but before they did that, they came to the HOA out that way, including Shadow Hills, not just Shadow Hills. And they said, hey, look, if we accept this donation and build a park, will you support this? And the answer at that time was yes, right? Yeah,
and actually this the original plan was just a testament to good governance. The at the time county executive, Bob Culver, and his team, Weston Young, they did what was right. They did their due diligence. They came to the impacted stakeholders. They said, this is our plan. This is what we would like to do. This is how it benefits us, and here's how it'll benefit you. And everybody came together, both branches of the government, all the impacted stakeholders, the environmental groups, and a good plan was formed that would benefit everybody.
It's interesting that you mentioned that when you purchased your home, you had an understanding that there would be a park developed there after they were done excavating soil for the landfill. And then you did find out in 2023 that had changed, that there was a private event out there, Safari at the Quarry. And although that is not going to be going forward, the plan to develop it into a park is also not to seem to be moving forward as fast as it should. Is that right?
Right. So, being a researcher by trade, I had looked into the records, made an extensive study of all the county council minutes and meetings from the beginning, from where they started to consider the donation until the events as far at the Quarry, because, one thing a lot of people don't know is that when that first came up, people were not really so vehemently against it. We didn't really know what was going on. We thought it might really just be a one-weekend event, and we wanted more information, and we were trying to find out. So during that process, when I started to research and I saw that it had been removed from the CIP that year, just before the signing of the MOU, that's when we really went on high alert.
I went to the tour. Secretary Kurtz came down.
So the great thing about a partnership park is it is loosely defined. So when we think about partnership parks, it really is how does the state, primarily Department of Natural Resources, work with our towns, our counties, our municipalities, nonprofits, to establish parks that have the most important and most impact for the communities.
So the property that we're at now, Conley Mill, is really a blank slate. So this is just a piece of property owned by the county. It's about 230 acres. Where we are is in the Conley Mill property. To your right, to your left, are man-made. These ponds here, they're going to be about 15 to 20 acres. Right now, our public works team is digging dirt for the landfill. One of a couple unique things about this property. So again, it's about 200 some acres. You've got a lot of woods that head that way, and you've also got a lot of elevations. And those of you, I'm preaching to the choir here from the Eastern Shore, we don't get a lot of elevations in a lot of places. But in this property, there's certain elevations that go up to 40-foot elevation. So you have some different contours, which could make for some interesting things in a park. And then the other unique thing is its location. So as you can see by the map, this property could connect directly to our Henry Parker Sports Complex, which is that way, which is our main hub athletic facility, and then also the city of Salisbury's Naylor Mill Forest, which has some forest trails. So when you talk partnership, something could look like state, county, city. You could potentially piece things together to have something interesting. So
There's a park that would be owned by the county in this case, but in partnership with the state to run basically a state park on county-owned land, right?
Correct.
And this is an undeveloped park. The director of Parks, Rec, and Tourism, Steve Miller, mentioned that there's a 40-foot elevation change over the course of the 230 acres.
Yes, I understand that it's maybe the highest, and if not, close to the highest topographical elevation in the county.
Yeah, and there's wetlands out there that should be protected, and also maybe educational opportunities out there for folks to, school children to visit and see that
Yes,
part as well.
it has 3 creeks that form the headwater of the Wicomico River. It has, it's located on top of the Paleo Channel, has non-tidal wetlands, forest. Ourselves in our own backyard, we see all kinds of wildlife. It's a spectacular place, and it's one of the few remaining large tracts of green space in Wicomico County.
You also attended the meetings for Leonard Mill Pond Dog Park. So we've watched a potential piece of property in the county that was being underutilized be redeveloped into something that is now an asset to the community, and even the transient tourists coming through at our
Right.
tourism center with dogs to go out there. So you and your family, you spend a lot of time in the county parks. This isn't just
Correct.
having one in your backyard, right?
No, right. And we also are active in participating in the public meetings about the parks. We try as best as we can to be active in that because they are amazing assets for our community.
So since we've had the tour of Conley Mill as a potential partnership park site, there's also been other information that's come out. And Mike, I know you've been following the story as well through the Natural Resources Conservation Advisory Committee. But that seems to go against having this turned into a partnership park. So I want to get a sense for this other angle that's being presented by the county executives team.
Right. So let me give you a little bit of context for that. Before I ever came into this, work to save Conley Mill Park, there was a lot of community advocacy for Conley Mill Park. If you go back through the records and in the beginning in 2017, 2018, 2021, all before I was ever on the scene, there were many groups that talked about the value of this land for running, for hiking, for bird watching, disc golf. There were so many advocates that came forward and spoke about how important this place was. So when we saw that it was taken off, the community all came together. We all kind of rose up. There's a petition with over 1,260 signatures. We've packed rooms at the CIP hearing. I think through this dedicated work, we have gotten it where it is back on the CIP. What I do think is missing, though, is the fact that this original vision was really well laid out by Weston Young and by Steve Miller and by the impacted stakeholders. It was clear. And now we keep on seeing different threats, different alternative visions. Our message is pretty clear. We want to get back to the beginning.
Well, one of those different visions was presented at the NRCAC meeting, right? I mean, moving dredge spoils from Sharps Point. What do you think's changed, Mike?
Well, I think we need to take one step backwards. When the current county executive came into office is when she announced her desire to have to turn Conley Mill essentially into an off-road track. Now, got to keep in mind that the stakeholders in the neighborhood, such as Shadow Hills, where Mikkel lives, they were not advised. In fact, this was pushed through without any of the due process that's required under state law, which would have been a public hearing, public comment period, and notification through major media, such as the newspaper. These are requirements under the state law. The county executive didn't follow them. What was her motivation? Apparently, by her own admission, to benefit a personal friend of hers who was the event promoter. Okay, so finally, the county council took some action to require their approval for any motorized events that would be held on county-owned property. So that shut down Safari at the quarry. We thought we were okay over there. Now here we are a number of months later, a year later, and now the executive comes up with another plan to use Conley Mill for something other than a park. And that plan is to use it for a disposal site for dredge spoil from the Wicomico River, which has to be periodically dredged to maintain navigability of the Federal Navigation Channel to commercial traffic. There are so many better opportunities to dispose of the dredge spoil in a beneficial manner. In fact, from the research we've done, this is the least beneficial option that one could possibly imagine.
Because we're talking about 26,000 trucks just for the material out of Sharps Point, but that's not counting the logs and stuff out of the landfill that they're looking to move over there. Right?
Exactly. 26,000 minimally just to move the dredge spoil, and part of that plan is to move the forest slash that's currently stored at the landfill. Now, this is no small volume. We're talking 1.7 million cubic yards of material, dumping it into the existing lake there, and then covering it with the siltaceous material from the dredge spoil to encapsulate it to prevent it from rotting, essentially, and releasing carbon into the atmosphere. Now, come on, this is natural material. Trees die in the woods and release carbon every single day. This is nothing that's artificially produced. And how much carbon would be released from that, who the heck knows? What we do know is that from taking just the 27,000 trips to move the dredge spoil alone, it's been pretty easy to calculate. I won't give you the numbers, but it boils down to more than 3,000 tons of carbon would be released by the dump trucks. Have no idea how many truckloads it would take to move the forest slash, because it's an irregular material with varying densities, but it doesn't, you can just eyeball that. It'll take tens of thousands more truckloads.
And we'd have to repair roads and pave, and this is all to save the environment. It sounds ridiculous.
Well, the county executive, she loves using the term beneficial use. I'm not sure that she really understands what it means. Now, yes, there are beneficial uses for dredge spoils. They can be used to restore eroding islands, of which we have quite a few in the Chesapeake Bay. They can be used for shoreline stabilization, wetlands mitigation. There's many different uses. I think that those are higher and better uses than dumping the stuff into what's become really a pretty pristine lake that would be a great recreational amenity for the county. And keeping in mind that Conley Mill Park, even though it's county-owned land, it's actually in the city of Salisbury, and it's very close, within 5 miles of almost any neighborhood within the city limits of Salisbury, and it would be a terrific opportunity to build a park.
Mikkel, I want to ask you, I see your brochure here, the Save Conley Mill Park brochure, which is very well done. There's a QR code that I'm sure takes you to the website.
Yes, sir.
What is your short-term goals, and I know what your long-term goal is. What are your short-term goals for now?
Well, right now, we really feel that developing Conley Mill Park, first off, there's so many economical benefits. There's so many benefits for health, mental, social, physical well-being.
I want to ask you about this letter that you've written to the county council. Your goal there is to at least protect the property at Conley Mill Park from development or misuse. Is that right?
Correct. We think that it's time, really, just to get to the root of the matter. A public process was carried out. It was done the right way. It was done with all the right people at the table. And it's time to honor that promise.
I referenced earlier the dog park out at Leonard's Mill Pond. You and your husband, myself, we were involved in the planning process with our county leadership there. If that park has been completed, if you go through the whole process, they tell you that this is what's going to happen, and then your input is taken, and then just it never is followed through. Why would you ever participate again?
Right, and we're making a stand here. We're making a stand because this could be Wicomico Central Park. This could benefit every citizen. And if we lose this, not only do we lose that tremendous asset, but we also lose the public trust. And there's another aspect that this land was donated to the people of Wicomico, and through that donation process, the people were involved in what this would be, and the donor was involved in what would finally become. Mm-hmm. And if you look back, it's really clear in the record. It was laid out, and it's even laid out in the deed.
It's in the documents that this will become a park when the sand, excavating the sand is done, which is used at the landfill. And now the county executive, unilaterally, I mean, let's face it, this is a unilateral decision on the part of the county executive, is trying to put the kibosh on this. And in my personal opinion, at this point, it's punitive. It's a punitive action against the neighborhoods, including Shadow Hills, that lie in close proximity to this property. Through the activism in order to shut down the safari at the quarry, which wasn't going to be one event. There were multiple events.
Three.
There was at least 4, actually, that were specifically named with any number of additional events upon mutual agreement between the county. So this was going to be pretty much a permanent feature. Well, we were able to show the public that not only did this cost the county untold tens of thousands of dollars, but it broke the promise, and due process was denied, and it made the county executive look pretty bad. And now it's my personal belief that by virtue of the fact that she wants to use it as a dredge spoil deposition site, that is entirely retaliatory action. And I fully expect that she is going to try to do anything possible to prevent this park, Conley Mill Park, from being established.
And one thing to note is that many times the executive has mentioned that she didn't take it off the CIP, but this isn't true.
At no point ever has my administration stated that we are against the property at Conley Mill eventually becoming a park. The decision to hold off on this was done prior to my administration and prior to this council.
In this email, lastly, the county council is the reason they're talking about Conley Mill. The county council is the reason the property did not live forward. I think they mean move. She meant move forward as a park in 2021 before I took office. This ecologically valuable site is only used to mine dirt for our landfill and will continue to be that at the council's request. Now, this is a statement saying that the council has requested in 2021 that Conley Mill be nothing more than a mining pit. Couldn't be anything further from the truth.
And go right into the records, and you can see that she did take it off. You know, so I think that's worth noting because it does come up time and again. And the thing is that also I've heard her statements that this will not prevent Conley Mill from becoming a park. But, you know, when I found out about this, I went to the NRCAC meeting simply to make sure that Conley Mill Park was put on the strategic land plan. That was my purpose for being there. I had no idea that this plan was going to be pitched that day. But when it was, you know, the words that caught my attention, you know, Adam Corey, he said, you know, more than likely this is the direction of beneficial dredge for use for Wicomico County. And Chris McCabe, who was there, said that we have 30 years of dredge storage in just a portion of the lake. Yeah. By the way, that lake is beautiful, magnificent. And if you go into the record, that lake was supposed to be the anchor.
Yeah.
They said, we will dig the dirt to create the water features, and all of Wicomico can be proud and go there and know that this wonderful place was created and we made use in this other way.
Yeah. Mikkel, thank you very much. Thank you, Michael.
Of course.
And I appreciate it. Look, we want to get any updates. We know that you're staying on top of this, so come back and see us, will you?
Great.
When we come back, we're going to bring in Trish Melvin. We're going to get her perspective as someone who has viewed the county council meetings and see what she has to say about Conley Mill Park. Welcome back to Open Agenda. In the studio with us now is Ms. Trish Melvin. Thanks for coming back. Mike Goldberg, thanks for sticking around.
Yes, sir.
So it was really interesting to get to talk to Mikkel Darlene. I know you have been very active with county council meetings lately. She has in the last year and a half, 2 years. Community advocacy is something both of you believe in. You had a chance to hear her talk about her involvement with the park. What is your perspective on someone who has been active in the community here lately?
I've got a couple concerns about this plan for Conley Mill, based on what I heard at the meetings and what Mikkel just said. One is, well, first of all, when the waterways are dredged, MDE, Maryland Department of Environment, needs to test that sediment, because even if the water is pristine, the sediment can hold on to a lot of contaminants, like PCBs primarily. That testing needs to be done before that spoils goes anywhere. I don't know the last time it was tested. I guess if it was dredged 4 years ago?
7 years ago.
7 years ago.
Yeah, it was dredged 4 years ago, but that spoil was pumped directly into Deal Island.
Okay.
It was the lower part of the river.
Well, Adam Quarry has indicated that they've done preliminary testing. I don't
Okay.
know what that means.
All right.
It's just a term, but it's a pretty long length of river between downtown Salisbury and where it dumps into Tangier Sound. So there could be different contaminants in different sections of that river.
indeed.
So the last section to be dredged was the lower section, and that material was all pumped directly to Deal Island to do some island restoration. So what's my bigger concern is probably the upper reaches of the Wicomico, where there is a history of industrialization and point source contamination. They're going to find something there. It's not going to be pristine under any circumstance. But my concern is, even though that there's a natural impermeable clay layer at below Conley Mill, and even if you construct clay liners or use geotextiles to ensure that nothing is getting through that in these impermeable layers, seismic activity over time, water penetration can create fissures that would allow toxic chemicals or carcinogenic chemicals to reach the Paleo Channel, and the Paleo Channel is the primary source of potable water for most residents of Wicomico County. There's no guarantees there, but to put it directly over our source of drinking water, it may not affect us 10 years from now, but it could affect us 20 or 50 years from now.
From a soil science standpoint, you're taking, and this is where I come from, you're taking dredge spoil and you're leaving it at least near the source that it came from. So if it's at Sharps Point, it's a mile away from the river. If it's on Deal Island, it's within the boundaries of the floodplain. So it's easily to say that, okay, if there's heavy metals or other contaminants in that sediment, then it may be found there anyway. You're literally going to take heavy metals that could be found in the river and truck them 12 miles away as the bird flies into an area that's not prone to that. Conley Mill Park is not part of a floodplain. This is hydrogeology 101. This is stuff that I would have taken my freshman year in college. So why even take the risk? You might be right that they could put liners in, and you might even be right that there could be fissures in later, but it still just seems ridiculous to me that you would even put yourself in that position where you would let it happen, because you have to work so hard just to make it messed up.
Well, it's rolling the dice with people's health, but this could be years down the road. To me, the greater reason not to do this is the cost and inefficiency. I mean, to truck this material, 15 miles away from Sharps Point, Look, it just stands to reason that with literally dozens of potential beneficial reuse projects throughout the Chesapeake Bay region, there's going to be all kinds of beneficial reuse projects. Give the material away, but to actually load it onto a truck and move it somewhere else, and we've already...
We know what that cost is. The cost is about $11 million just to move 300,000 cubic yards.
Minimally.
And that's in the minimum. And that's not counting the forest slash. So, this money has to come from somewhere. Trish, I want to circle this back to the community outreach we saw with 287G. We saw lots of folks from different ethnic backgrounds speak out against 287G, but we also saw a lot of Caucasian folks who particularly probably would not be affected there. One of the arguments I've heard with Conley Mill is that's somebody else's problem. That's Delmar's problem. That's the north side of the county's problem. But folks came out to speak out against 287G who would not have been impacted by its effects. Do you think people throughout the county, someone from Fruitland, for instance, should look at Conley Mill Park as a case study of where government is going wrong?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm interested, and I live probably as far in the county. Well, I live on the southern side of the county, and that's on the northern side. I would love to have a park there. I would use it because we're talking about credibility of our county officials. And I have a lot of concerns, as I mentioned, the contamination, potential contamination. Another concern I have is this topic of carbon sequestration. I spent months at one time in my life working in a marketing effort to try and make some claim about carbon credits and carbon offsets, and worked on it for months. It went nowhere because the particular government agency we were working with would not acknowledge it. Okay. And so when I hear carbon credits right away, just from that experience,
You've seen the card game of it just being shifted
participated in the card game, and it went nowhere.
This is the cap and trade that we've heard so much about, and at this point in time, we know that the carbon markets have collapsed. So we're talking $2, maybe $5 per ton, somewhere in that range. So whatever revenue that the county executive believes is going to be generated by the sale of carbon credits is absolutely nothing compared to simply the cost of shipping and processing all of this material.
And if I'm not mistaken, those calculations enter into the equation.
What the emissions are
Yes.
for the removal as well.
And I guess it depends on what program that you're involved in.
Yeah, but just from the financial, try to order a load of sand and have it delivered to your house. Tell them you'll pay them $5 a ton. You're not going to get your sand delivered to your house.
You asked Trish about how if you don't live there, does this affect you? Well, it does. From a health perspective, if the Paleo Channel does become contaminated, well, it may not affect us, but it may affect our children or grandchildren. And who is going to pay the tens of millions of dollars that it will cost to transport this material? That's going to be our tax dollars. If you simply take a look at it from an efficiency perspective, this is the least efficient plan imaginable. And when it comes to the environmental perspective, and I'm not just talking about contamination of the Paleo Channel, but when we have islands that need to be restored, we have shoreline stabilization projects that can take place. These are higher and better uses. Why is this particular plan been brought to the front of the line? And I get back to my belief that it's punitive more than anything else.
And if it was a benefit to the community, it would benefit the whole county as well. So
exactly.
Let's hold them accountable to the promise that was made.
Amen.
Thank you both for your insight into this. Thanks for watching this episode of Open Agenda. We'll be back later this week with another new episode.
You think you'll be able to edit out all of our errors here?
Oh, yeah. Mostly Trish's.